Good evening, everybody. Welcome by Mindful Elevation discussion. Another hour during our weekend where we're going to be sharing some interesting information and where we're going to talk with a special guest. The topic for tonight is going to be generational and societal trauma, what the psychological, emotional impact can be on our life, if it has to do with our ancestors, grandparents. We're going to be discussing all of that and what we can do to kind of like break the cycle. So for tonight, our guest is going to be Mrs. Tracy Forder. She's a coach, and together with her, we're going to be talking about that topic. Welcome, Mrs. Tracy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ramonda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is my jam.
I'm excited too. I can't wait for us to dive into the topic.
Yes,
So, let me start with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
absolutely. Well, I am a newlywed. I've been married almost 2 years. We have an anniversary coming up next week. So,
Oh, congratulations.
newlywed. I am also the mother of two amazing grown and gone adult daughters. They're 37, almost 38, and 34. Also a business owner. I am a insurance agency owner. I've been in the insurance industry for about a little over 3 decades. So I'm aging myself, but I'm doing that gracefully. I am also a speaker. Love to be on the speaking circuit, inspiring women to be absolutely fearless, authentic, and unapologetic to create that amazing life that we want. An author and also a coach. I am a trauma healing coach for Black women, and I help support them in the healing journey and the self discovery journey so that they can process those emotions that are a result of the mental and emotional oppression from various types of trauma, such as generational, societal, or historical, if you will, and childhood trauma.
Nice. That's a whole long list, and it's so impressive, but also important when you're able to indeed help and assist the other ones with whatever challenge they have. So you said that yes, you work on different areas, and then tonight it's going to what we're going to talk is about the generational and societal trauma. So
Yes.
why do you actually think it's important for us to be talking about that topic?
Well, considering Black Lives Matter, how the movement has really picked up steam, unfortunately, due to the murder of George Floyd. When I decided to really focus in on this, it was because I saw so many of my sisters, my brothers, all of us really in so much pain. And yes, there was some allyship, if you will. And I really don't like that word because why should we have allies? Equality and treating people the right way with humane in respect. That's the way it should be. I shouldn't need an ally for that because that's the way it should be. But that was the reason why, because when we don't understand where the racism comes from, when we don't understand where we get it from a perspective of that it comes from slavery, but how does it really affect us now? And how is it still affecting us generations and generations and generations? And why we do some of the things that we do. Some of the things that we do are no longer serving us. And we need to unlearn those things and learn the new way of doing things that will actually serve us and support us as we go through this transition prayerfully. In our lifetime, we will see that we actually get equality here in the world, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the ancestors, and of course, with that, it comes the generations before us. Why actually is it important for us to know the history of our ancestors?
It's so important. I don't know about you all, but my mom, one thing they would always say is you need to know who your kin folks are. If you don't know who your family is, you don't know who you're potentially marrying. Of course, that's one reason, because that would be a very incestuous relationship, of course, but it could cause a whole lot of problems, especially if there were some children born because of the genes and chromosomes and things like that. We know that that's a big, big part of it. But from from generational trauma or even historical trauma, the reason why we need to know is, who are we? Many of us, and I'll use myself as an example. I am only able to go as far back as my great grandfather to for my lineage. After that, the only thing I have are slave records, which are very, very few and far and in between. I think I found on my mother's father's side the slave owner's name and the address, but there was no other information about my grandfather. And the same thing on my father's side. So for most of us of African heritage, we do not have a huge history of who our ancestors were, except from where they were actually detained in Ghana. That may be the first and the last place that we may find, because there were so many different tribes. Where in Africa are we from? I do love the fact that Ancestry and 123, I think it's 123 something.com or something like that, does provide some type of ancestry, and it tells you a little bit about where you may have originated from. But that's still not enough information for most people. But the little bit of information that we do have, it's important for us to have that information, again, to know where we come from. What stories do we want to actually claim? Which ones are not actually the ones that we should be claiming? Connection. We need that connection, especially from being from West African heritage. Many of us don't know who we are. So having that connection, that's family. And many of us don't have family. So knowing our ancestors, it gives us meaning, identity, so many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see, indeed, like you said, more and more people are interested to know where they're coming from, and or where their ancestors are coming from, and they're more interested in their own history, instead of just taking over whatever history other people coming and tell them. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
really seeing that shift.
We need to know that information. And also, yes, great people can tell us information, and that information may very well be valid. But from a different perspective, when it comes from trauma, we don't know what patterns, we don't know what behaviors, what things are something that are dominant in our life. If you can do a genogram, that would be very helpful. But many of us don't have the ability to do that. Again, I can only go back as far as my great grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Health wise, we could learn certain things about our health. Was alcoholism a part of our family? Did we have large cases of diabetes and high blood pressure and the things that they say are rampant in the African American community? Yes, we know that it is rampant, but it's because of disparities that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But those socioeconomic disparities are the reason why we have many of those health disparities.
Yeah, correct. Can you explain us in short what a genogram is?
A genogram is basically like a family tree. And with the genogram, I wish I had it's hard to get a one that you can play with, but a genogram is basically like your family tree. And what you do is you're listing the maternal side and your paternal side on each side, depending on the way the genogram is set up. And you are actually mapping out your grandfather, your great grandfather, aunts and cousins and sisters and brothers. But you're also mapping out certain things about patterns, what type of illnesses that they have. Did they have any type of certain behaviors? Were they dealing with mental illness? Were they dealing with, again, alcoholism? Were they victims of abuse or something like that? That's what a genogram will actually help you. And it's used a lot in the mental health field, particularly with therapists. I have used it with my clients to some degree. We map those things out, especially when there is a block and they're not sure of who they are, because again, we don't know a lot of times. And if we've never had that conversation, or people are not talking about it, or they don't know, That's you. It can come in very helpful. The more information you have, the better, and the more your family is willing to have the dialogue with you, the better.
Yes, exactly. Because it's like you said, in our community, sometimes it's stopped by your grandparents. You don't even know who your great grandparents are, let alone for you to know what type of, like you mentioned a few examples, if there was alcohol abuse in the family, or diabetes, or
Mhm.
blood pressure. It's not things that we really talk about, and let alone pass on the information to the next generation for them to know, just in case if anything happened with them, for them to know that, oh yes, my
Absolutely.
parents, my grandparents had this, so let me go and check it out, or let me go and do something about it.
Exactly. A perfect example is my family. I know that diabetes is on my grandmother's side, and my mom. She's thank God she doesn't have it. However, getting the information about various things. I have an aunt that passed away about 3 years ago, and I still don't know to this day what she actually really had. And it's like it's top secret. Well,
Yeah.
that is information that not only I need to have, but her kids need to have, and their kids need to have, and their kids need to have. Because what if there is some information that they can actually provide to them? If it's an autoimmune disease, there are certain things that you can do. If it's an autoimmune disease, like take an enzymes that can help manage your digestive part. Because when you have an autoimmune disease, the enzymes in your digestion are a big part of that. But if you
Mhm.
don't know, you can't take precautionary measures. So there's
Yeah.
maintenance available. So having that conversation, having that dialogue is so important.
Correct, correct. And another thing too that started recently is also our DNA. That if we know what pattern were in our grandparents, ancestors, they started saying that the DNA, our DNA can change. Can you give a little bit, talk a
I
little bit
can.
about that? Because it's
Yeah,
really interesting, because we always, well, me then, I always understood that the DNA you born with, and that is, it's not something that, because a particular person is going to behave a certain way, it has a great impact on your DNA. So, can you talk with us about that?
absolutely. It's actually called epigenetics. And what it is actually, it's not so much that your DNA structure changes, it impacts the DNA in that it changes in, let me say that again. The actual change is not in the sequence of your DNA. It changes in the structure of the DNA. So your DNA still stays your DNA, of course, but the structure of it, which actually allows you and helps you absorb, or actually names that the DNA, if you will. So let's say, for instance, your family had mental illness, but no one is actually owning up to that there is in mental illness, because in our communities we don't talk about mental illness. We don't go get therapy most of the time. We are doing better. Thank God we're doing better. But what, let's say for instance it was schizophrenia, but nobody talked about it. And it's been going on for, let's say, 10 generations, even though we don't know how far back, but we can go back three. But if we know, and if we knew that in that fifth generation, but it went back 10, but it skipped three generations, that information is going to change the structure of your DNA, because there's no help, of course. So that trauma, if you will, is actually basically like an imprint on how much your generations and your ancestors have actually been living through this trauma, which is so important. Why it's so important for people to be generational cycle breakers. I don't believe in generational curses. We're not cursed. They are cycles. We can break those cycles if we are willing to do the work. if we're willing to say this stops with me, and knowing that if you start this cycle breaking, you may lose some family. You may lose some really close people because people don't want to talk about those secrets in the closet. They want to keep them in the closet because remember when we were growing up, they would say what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Yes, no dirty laundry outside.
Exactly. Secrets kill us. And those
Mhm.
secrets are the reasons why we are still dealing with a lot of generational trauma. For instance, I was on a Facebook group yesterday or the day before, and the young lady had been abused by an uncle. And the funniest part, and I won't say funny, the
Mhm.
saddest part is that her mother really did not acknowledge it. And she was about to put the young lady out, and she told her she could go live with the uncle who abused her.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what's happened is the mother has become desensitized, and it's probably something that she may have experienced, and maybe someone else before her may have experienced, and it's something that's just gone on and kind of been swept up on the rug. We don't talk about it. We act like nothing is going on. That couldn't have happened. You just, you know what? I don't want to hear that. And the young lady is still traumatized because of this. She
Yeah.
is probably going to be the cycle breaker. Prayerfully,
Okay.
she will be to have that conversation and say, no, this happened to me, and I will
Mhm.
not stand for this.
Yeah.
Which may cost her relationship with her mother, but at the same time, that's something that she has to break for herself. And if she ever decides to have children, her children and their children and their children.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Because indeed, then it will have impact on the next generation, like you said, because of the way she might be keeping in the trauma, and then of course that impacts your behavior. So yes, I hope so
Absolutely.
too for the lady. Mm-hmm.
It really does. I was talking to someone, and I cannot remember who it was, but she was saying something happened to her with a family member. And because of what happened, she doesn't allow her children to go on stay overnight. So my thinking is it must have been some type of abuse that was molestation or sexual or some type of abuse that happened when she was spending the night somewhere. So she connects spending the night somewhere to danger. So because of that, now she's hyper vigilant when it comes to her kids. There's a part of their life that they don't get to experience because of her unprocessed trauma, because now
Yeah.
she's being very hypervigilant and thinking. But not only that, because of her hypervigilance, they are actually traumatized as well. Because when they start to have children, guess whose children aren't going to be able to stay over, possibly
Yeah. Their children.
until they
Yes.
have that conversation. I think they did have that conversation, but it wasn't the fact that the fact of the matter is the actual thing that happened. Could it have happened whether or not it was a stayover? It possibly could have.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
because it's unprocessed and because it happened that way, we do things. And those are some of the behaviors. We either become very hyper vigilant, very, very protective of our kids, or we'll become, sometimes we'll be lax in boundaries because that's what we saw. Some of us become very, very independent. I used to be a very hyper independent person because of my trauma. And that was really, and actually, I was thinking about it the other day. I think I may have been a little overprotective with my kids because I would cut you too thin and fry for my children. So sometimes, we don't think about why we actually respond that way. But once I started doing the healing, and the healing is something that is continuous. Just,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, even just think about it. I was thinking about this and I was going, was I really? Maybe I was hyper vigilant with my kids. So that's something for me to start uncovering, to determine, and to have the conversation with my kids. Do you think mommy was a little bit overprotective? Do you think I went, a little too aggressive sometimes in certain things that I would not allow you all to do, or things that, I may have come off a little aggressive with someone because they said something that I felt was not right to you, or how they said it.
Mm-hmm.
So many things that knowing. your background could prevent us from actually walking in that. Because had I not been hyper independent, I wouldn't have blocked me a lot of blessings, because I wasn't willing to ask for help. I was doing everything on my own.
Yeah, yeah, that is
Weigh
true.
yourself out.
When we use the example that you gave about the lady maybe went through a trauma, so that's why her children are not being able to have sleepovers, and then when their children come into life, most probably they cannot have sleepovers. But then when we're talking about those children, how actually we can connect it to that being a trauma for those children as well. I mean, it's a small thing. It's not. I mean, it's not like it's sexual abuse to the, let me call them the grandchildren. No. So most of us might think yes, but it's just a sleepover. If your parents don't want it, where can be the trauma? So
Okay, that's a very good question. The trauma could be, and the way it typically works out is people associate sleepover as being unsafe. So what happens is that they become anxious. They start to really become hyper vigilant. They start to possibly get really agitated, and start making the phone calls. Are you okay? And what happens is you start checking on your child so much when they are at other people's homes and so forth. The child starts to associate that with unsafe. And what starts to happen is as they grow older, they start to become less, they connect less with people. They don't let people in. They start being very, very introverted from a perspective of not allowing people in, not introverted from people needing space to actually rebuild their energy. And that's what introversion is. It's all about energy. It's not introversion that you don't like people. It's just that you can't take a lot. You have to have more me time so that you can build up from it. So it can be the things that we do are the signals that we send to our kids or other people that actually go, okay, I need to, should fight or flight pop up? Should, what am I supposed to do here? When it really, if we have the conversation with our kids and so forth, and not just have the conversation, but heal and process your emotional wounds and baggage from that, to understand that that was not your fault. Understand how to soothe, how to protect, how to do some inner child healing so that you can actually learn how to protect your inner child from that, because our inner child is still inside of us. That's why many of us still like to do things like I'm going to speak for me. I still love to go to the playground. I like to get on the sliding boards. I still like to get on a little, what is that little merry-go? What's that little thing that you jump on? I don't even know what you call it, but
me neither, but yes.
I still love to swing high in the swings and yell and be a kid. So we still have our inner child. And our inner child, when we actually are afraid a lot of times, or we're anxious, or we are depressed and things like that, a lot of times it's actually the inner child that's needing the soothing, because that is part of who you are. And if that's never happened, that child has never felt safe, if we've not processed the trauma so that we've learned what inner child healing we need, which could be a number of different things, we're going to consciously and unconsciously be very stressed. We're going to have anxiety. We're probably going to have insomnia. We may suffer from nightmares. We may have flashbacks. So many things that could be a result of not processing those emotional wounds.
Yes. And I have a comment already that based on what you have been saying, she's saying yes, and that connections are lost. That's sad. I think that these reactions by hurt people serve to protect, because what if you healed and let go, but the same thing ended up happening to your child?
And that is a possibility that something could happen to your child. However, we have to separate the actual event from the person. The person is the problem. That person who is actually committing those things also is traumatized. So something happened to that person as well. And until people start to heal, start to request the therapy, start to have the conversations, why is this happening? what happened in this person's past, and start asking questions of the people that they have, that their kids are around, and checking backgrounds and so forth. I know for me, with my kids, I would have to know people for some time, watch their kids and so forth, and before I would allow them to go to anyone's house. But on the other side of that, we also have to teach our kids and make sure that our kids have a voice. Many times we have been told, and this is one of the things that generational trauma, we've told our kids they should be seen and not heard. That in the past, this is going back to historical trauma, which is slavery, that served a purpose back in the day, because yes, seen and not heard kept us alive, but seen and not heard today can get us killed or have us in a position where we cannot say anything. So we have to have conversations. We have to give our children their voice back so that they can actually start saying, Mom, I don't feel good I don't like what's going on over there. Dad, I don't like going on what's over there. Because a lot of times you're going to do what I say, not what you don't tell me what to do. You do what I say do. And we're not necessarily listening and hearing them. And we have to remember there are many adults. They haven't made it yet, but they learn what they live also. So if they see that you're not talking, you're not sharing, they're not going to talk, they're not going to share. And that was the one thing I was very adamant about doing with my children, regardless of the trauma that I'd been through. And I'd been through childhood trauma, I'd been through domestic abuse and almost raped and all sorts of things, is to make certain that they know that no matter what was going on, they could come and talk to me. And that's why I was like, maybe I was a little bit hyper vigilant, because you did what to my child? You said what? Oh no, let me take these glass. That's what I meant by maybe I was a little hyper vigilant. But we have to remember that if something does happen, it's not because you didn't that, because even though you process the emotional wounds, it's still not your fault. The person who did the harm, it's still their fault. They don't get get out of jail card or anything. But we also have to be really understanding to a certain degree. And I know that's the hardest thing to do, especially when someone does something to your child. And I'm one to talk about it, is to understand that there is some trauma there as well. And that's the hard part.
Yes, that is like that indeed. That especially when it comes to the traumas and how it goes over to the other generation. Indeed, when we're talking about the trauma and the mental health, what connections can we make there?
Trauma and mental health, because of generational trauma, because of historical trauma. And we didn't really talk a lot about a historical trauma, but because of the two. And historical trauma is actually the reason why we have a lot more generational trauma, because historical trauma is rooted in the collective community who has been oppressed in some capacity, or they have endured some type of cataclysmic event. For us as African Americans, it was slavery, racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and so forth. You name it, we've gotten it, right? And as a result of the slavery, a lot of the things that we did and our ancestors did generations ago are the things that we're still doing today. Like, again, what goes on in this house stays in this house. There was a reason for it then. And yes, there does need to be privacy, of course, but we do need to understand that we have to have dialogue. We can't just keep everything to ourselves and sweep things up under the carpet anymore, because it's killing us. Again, secrets kill us. But how that shows up as substance abuse. It shows up as alcoholism. It shows up as emotional eating, whether that's binging, whether that's anorexia, whether that's bulimia. It shows up as anxiety. It's called GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. It could be bipolar disorders or some form of depression. There are so many ways that it can show up as mental health illnesses. As a matter of fact, generalized trauma was actually coined in 1966 by a Canadian psychiatrist who was actually seeing a lot of patients from the Holocaust. They were actually survivors They were actually the children of survivors of the Holocaust. And they started to see that they were having a lot of psychiatric and mental illness problems. And they were like, wait a minute, what's going on? And they started to go, wait a minute, we're seeing I think it was like 300% increase in psychiatric and mental health issues with the Holocaust survivors. And that is when they actually coined generational trauma, because that's unchecked, unmanaged, unprocessed, not healed, not healing. That where is that trauma going?
Yeah. And then
often is outward.
Yeah, correct. And then often when you get clients with, like you said, for example, the depression, you don't go and check their generations before. Okay, what might have happened there that it has an impact on you? Know that you have a depression. We just look in the here and now and try to solve it, or give the person tools to manage it.
Absolutely. And that's the hard part, because with therapy is different from coaching. And I'm a coach. Therapy is about identifying and diagnosing. They use the DSM and so forth. So they're going to categorize it, and they're going to talk to you typically usually about what happened in the past for the most part. However, what I've found with my clients, many of my clients do not feel the connection with their therapist. They feel that it's very stoic a lot of times. And this is just my clients. I'm not saying this happens with a lot of people. And I only work with Black women, so I can see how that can be the case sometimes, because if you don't have someone who looks like you, who can actually understand where your past is and how it affects you, and not have the compassion, it can be where you're not sharing a lot of information. And because what they tell me is, Coach Tracy, I have never told my therapist this. I've been in therapy for 5 years, and I have never told my therapist this. As a matter of fact, I've never gotten as much out of therapy as I've gotten out of coaching. And the reason is because I have a hybrid type of coaching program. We talk about the past, because you can't know how you got here unless you know where you were. Yeah. That's backwards. You start here and try to push somebody forward, but you don't know how they got here. Because if you don't fix what happened back here, they're going to keep taking it forward. So I do a deep dive. We have to, in order for the healing to happen. So we're doing mindset change. We're helping them manage their thoughts, manage their brain, and be able to disconnect their thoughts from who they are. Because many of them, I learned this from one of my friend with coach. I love how she described this, but many of us, our thoughts are here and this is us, right? But many of us think we are our thoughts and our thoughts are us. And that's not the case. It should be like this. So what I help my clients to do is to be able to start to open up and understand and separate that their thoughts and who they are not one and the same. Correct. Because a lot of the beliefs that we have about ourselves are beliefs that someone else has told us, and we've believed it, from our parents, from our teachers, from our significant others, and so forth. So if you're believing that your parents said that you're never going to be anything, you're believing that. That's not necessarily true. We can make it true because we can have self-fulfilling prophecy because of what someone said, but we do have free will, and we can decide whether or not we're going to make that thought us and us that thought, or if we're going to separate that thought, manage our brain and separate the thought, decide, okay, that's not true. That's not a fact. I need it to be a fact for me to believe it. So I decide I'm going to toss this one and unlearn that one and take up a new thought. And sometimes, you may have those thoughts come back, but you may even intermesh them, but then you start taking them back and you start moving and widening it and understanding and having a better understanding of who you are, because our thoughts are what creates our feelings, and our feelings create our emotions. And once our emotions are created is when we start acting from our emotions. If I'm angry, if I'm hurt, if I am mad as fire, what am I going to do? I'm going to start acting out. And those
Yeah.
actions is what create the habits. That's what's going to give us our results. So once we
Mhm.
can start managing our thoughts, everything else it gets easier and easier. Is it easy at the first? No. I'm a coach and I still got to manage my thoughts.
Correct, correct. We all indeed. And the beauty of is that even though it's kind of like slow, but people starting to get accustomed with the idea that like you explain about the thoughts and separate it, and also that they are the one in control of whatever is happening with them, and that they cannot sit and wait for somebody else to come with a solution, but they have to think for themselves as well what type of solution they might want so they can make it their own. So that.
Absolutely. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client, beautiful, beautiful soul. She is doing amazing with coaching. She is one that has worked with a therapist, and she did not understand why she was still sabotaging herself. We can want to make a change, but if you don't know the why of why you're doing something, you can't make the thought the correct thought. And what was happening is that she didn't realize, because of not receiving the emotional support, the praise, the provision, the um, presence, and so forth from her parents, she was actually seeking those things in other things, whether it be men, friendships, and so forth. So where there is a hole, it's very hard to fill a hole. Now, if
Mhm.
there's a crack, we can usually fill in a crack, but holes are different. And most people have a lot of holes when it comes to mother wounds and father wounds. And most of us have mother wounds and father wounds. Um, but she had a hole. She had a father wound hole. And once we were able to connect her actions with her emotions and her feelings and her thoughts and the self sabotage, she was like, oh my God, I have never I never, the connection was never there. All these years being with someone with therapy, no one's teaching you how to manage your thoughts. They're just telling you who you are, but not how to manage your thoughts.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
that's so important, because until you can manage your thoughts, you can't make different decisions.
Yeah, indeed. I can continue talking the whole night about this, but let me let me go touch on the societal trauma as well. So,
Hmm.
if you can give us, let's say, a description about what it is, how it, for lack of word, how it works, and what the impact are.
Absolutely. Historical, AKA societal trauma. It is where a not an individual, but a community, a race, a ethnicity, a religion, or simply a group of people. It's where they have a cataclysmic event that it happens to them. And typically it involves some type of, it could be a war, it could be nature, it could be, for instance, the people who endured the tsunamis, the people in Iran and Iraq and places like that who are living in war constantly. That's considered historical trauma. For us as African Americans, the historic trauma for us is being the West African to transatlantic slave trade. And we became slaves here in the United States in colonization. As a result of that, racism and the oppression that goes along with oppression, with racism, all of those things impact how we show up in the world today. For instance, because of historical trauma, a lot of people think that they, especially high achieving women like myself and yourself, we are doing everything and we're kicking butt and we know we're really good at what we do. We're overachievers, we're getting these certificates, these degrees, and so forth, but we still feel like we're a fraud, or
Mhm.
we feel like we are not good enough. We feel unworthy still. That has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with two things: historical trauma, aka societal trauma, as well as corporate trauma. Because we have to remember, corporate America is dominated and was created by white supremacists, by patriarchy. So when you think about the biases and the racism and the oppression that's in the workplace, many of us are thinking that it's us, and it's not. The environment is the problem. And then on top of that, we still have to deal with and contend with the various microaggressions. You know, you talk good to be a Black woman, or you go into a store. I'll never forget. We were taking my daughter on a college trip to a Presbyterian college in Clinton, South Carolina. I will never forget it. We had a great visit at the college. We went down the street less than a mile from the college to the Waffle House. We were going to grab something to eat, and they would not serve us. This was in 2001. This was only 20 years ago. That's a type of, if you will, like a social type of microaggression. Then you have environmental microaggressions, if you will. You can have those microaggressions where people are actually filling your area up. I just think about Flint. It's not a microaggression, but it's environmentally, that is part of those things. So when we talk about historical trauma and then how it affects us from a generational trauma perspective, we've got double trauma on top of us. And then we go to work, and then we have more trauma on top of us. And then we deal in relationships we're dealing with people who are also traumatized. And then we got that trauma to contend with. So as a race, we are compounded with trauma from one side to the other.
Yeah, exactly. And then actually by you could almost say it's you could see the clear distinction, let's say where the power lies, or where they're trying to overpower. But over here you have our own Black people trying to put other Black people down, and trying to misuse their power to break others down. And we can understand that we all have to work together to be stronger. How is that possible?
Okay, that's a great one, because my husband and I were just talking about that. That is part of us being conditioned. That when we see that we are not supporting one another, we are not buying from one another, we are complaining about one another. You know, it's like they like to say the crab in the barrel mentality. That's not a crab in the barrel mentality. That is actually what was done to keep us divided. And it has worked, and it is still working very, very well. What's happened is that we actually are living with, many of us don't even realize it, we have unconsciously accepted a lot of the white supremacy and patriarchal thinking. I'll give you another perfect example. What I mean by that, there are many men who do not like being under the thumb, if you will, at work of a woman. Mm-hmm. Black men do not want to work under the thumb of a Black woman. Same thing as a white man does not want to be up under the thumb of a Black woman. Now, not everybody, I want to make sure we say that not everybody feels that way, okay? Mm-hmm. There are many, many people that do feel that way, but there are some who don't. And when a Black man feels that way about a white woman, that is also a Black woman who he is actually supposed to be reporting to. That is actually them taking on the fact that there is some supremacy, and she is less than. Mm-hmm. Or a Black woman clergy person. Some people will not go to the church. So those are things that have actually been implemented and have worked so well. They're tools that white supremacy and the patriarchy have actually used over and over and over again on us, and it is still working. I call it mental slavery.
Yes, indeed. And I have a question, but I think it's this almost the same as what I asked, but let me still ask it. How relevant is historical trauma to the Caribbean context? Is it similar to what you described, or are there differences?
Oh, I'm certain it's pretty much similar. I mean, because when we start to think about how we ended up on the various islands and so forth, how we don't really know how that actually happened, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So the islands were definitely there. It's just like Native Americans. They were here. They weren't lost. Nobody saved them. That Christopher Columbus stuff, that we know that's a bunch of bull.
Mm-hmm.
However, we don't know what truly happened. We do know that they have been, oh my gosh, their history is just as bad, if not worse, because their kids were taken from them at very small, young ages and put into like military type boarding schools. They weren't parented. They didn't get the next education. They didn't have connection. They were sexually abused quite often. They were physically abused quite often. So there's, oh my gosh, it's just so much. So I would venture to say, because many of our Caribbean sisters and brothers are more than likely descendants of or have ancestors that come from Africa as well, we probably endured a lot of the same things. My husband is Bajan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from South Carolina. If you know the history of Barbados and South Carolina are very intricately connected because, if I'm not mistaken, someone from Barbados, it had something to do with forming South Carolina. So there's more than likely a lot of connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Probably very,
Yeah.
very similar, if not the same.
Okay. And another question is, can the mass conversion of the African person into the Christian faith be considered historical trauma?
Say that again.
Can the mass conversion of the African person into the Christian faith be considered historical trauma?
That is a good question, and I wish I actually had a really good answer for that. But it could possibly, because if we think about it, many of the slave owners, if you will, utilized Christianity to do the bad deeds that they did. A lot of them used the I can't remember the scripture. Frederick Douglass actually wrote about it, how his owner would use a particular scripture and beat people and tell them that if you did what the master said, you wouldn't get those stripes. So he used the Bible against them to actually abuse them. So there is probably some truth to that. And I would consider that religious trauma. But it could be an effect of historical trauma. Absolutely. I think it's very definitely possible.
Okay. When we're going back to the mental slavery, when it comes to the Black community trying to overpower each other and those kind of, how will we be able to break that cycle?
We have to be courageous. We have to start saying, you know what? This is not working, because it's not. At some point, we've got to say, we are what? $1 trillion spending power, right? And that's probably just here in the United States. But if we combine that, if we were to actually put our minds together for one day and come together for one day and not purchase anything, how much would our voice be heard?
Yeah. Yes, it will be heard immediately.
Yes, immediately. And then there's the other thing that we have to start thinking about. And this is something that we do not have the luxury of. We didn't grow up with generational wealth. So there wasn't Brother John over here who was getting the business and learning business practices. What we were learning was how to keep a roof over our head and get the nearest job and keep our head down to stay alive, right? Mm-hmm. So they had generational wealth over here. So they understood how business works. And not only that, they had the access to resources to do business, and still to this day. So when we have our business owners like myself, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm a small business owner. I have mugs. This is one of my mugs that I sell. This mug is $20. Yes, you could go get a mug in Target, Walmart, and you may get a mug for $5, but you have to remember the business behind that, right? Walmart is a Fortune 500, has thousands of stores across the globe. So when they get buy a mug, or even if they decided to manufacture a mug, they are going to purchase that in wholesale, and they're going to get deep, deep discounts. That me, I'm only purchasing 100 mugs. My profit margin is not there. So
Mm-hmm.
what this mug may cost me, I don't know how much it costs me, but I'm just saying it may cost me $10 to get this mug. And that's not even talking about the shipping.
Mm-hmm.
This same mug could cost Walmart a penny.
Yeah.
So they can sell their mug for $3 and make a very hefty profit.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
I can't sell my mug for $3. I have already lost $7
Mm-hmm.
if I do
Yeah.
that. I have to sell it for $10 to $20. So we have to start thinking that many of us are doing business and we're buying in small quantities. So the price that we're paying for those small quantities in hopes that our brothers and sisters will purchase from us because we are their brothers and sisters, and stop complaining that it's too high.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Because when we go to Walmart, and let me just say Walmart, Kmart, Macy's, whatever store you frequent, Target, whatever, we don't complain and say that it's too high. We just go into our pocketbook, get that debit card, that cash, or whatever it is, and we pay.
Mm-hmm.
But we are quick to complain and berate our own sisters and brothers. And it's because we don't have the business sense a lot of times.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I will say this. We also have to work on our customer service. We also have to give our brothers and sisters a break when it comes to that, because we also have to remember most of us are not entrepreneurs who are able to sit at home all day, every day, and just do our business. Most of us have full-time jobs, and some of us have 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, and we are working this business. So please give each other some grace.
Yeah.
If you don't get it tomorrow, or if it takes them a little bit of time, as long as they are communicating with you, please give each other some grace. We have to learn how to show each other grace, and we can't be mad at our Jewish people because they are supporting each other, because that's what they're doing. We can't be mad at Mexicans or Hispanics because that's what they're doing. They are showing each other grace. Trust me, they got fallouts too. We just don't hear about it.
Correct. Correct.
They still
And
going to support each other.
correct. And that's going to say, because you talking about the states, a large country, but even when I bring it back to the islands, is the same concept that you was talking about. For us, a small business, it costs us a lot of money to
Mm-hmm.
make our products, and for us to ship it over, it costs triple that what it might cost
Mm-hmm.
you. And then indeed, the community don't understand that yes, it's not just the $20 for the mug, but how it was able to reach here, that we have to ask for the $20. But we prefer, like you said, to go to for me not to mention the names, but to go to a different group of entrepreneur to buy the same thing
Mm-hmm.
that, like you said, the black brother and sister can offer, while the other group, they get together, combine their effort, and
Yes.
then buy in bulk, like you said when you mentioned the big corporate businesses. They are able to bring the things in for cheap, so that's how they are
Right.
able to offer it for way cheaper than one small entrepreneur is able to offer the things. But and on top of that, we don't understand, or it is a challenge for us to combine our effort together, and try to see what we can do together without fighting each other and breaking each other down.
And that's a result of historical trauma. You think about the house brother or sister and the field brother or sister, and then you think about breaking the family up. You think about the beatings, you think about the
Mm,
lynchings, you think about the rape and the abuse, and so many things. All of that was designed to break our spirit, to break us down, and to
mm,
make us fearful. But if you've got contention like that between people who look just alike, and who should be together, you got control.
Yes, exactly.
And
Exactly.
unfortunately, some of us still have that mentality, and we haven't really come out of the fact that we're fighting each other, and that's exactly what they want us to do when we should be
Correct.
working together. And if we are fighting one another, because the first thing they say to us, and first thing they'll think of, bring up these statistics. Well, black folks this and black folks no. You see, you have to remember, you got statistics, and yes, your conviction rate for black people is very high. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we look at certain things, we know that inside of a movie, and this is just gonna break this down. If you're watching a movie and there's a black person in there, who's gonna die first?
The black one.
You got a lie. It's a good lie. It's okay to tell a lie if it's called a what?
Yeah.
A white lie. Then
Yeah.
you got magic is okay, but when it's not good, it's called black magic.
Yes.
When
Correct.
you got angel food cake, it's what color is angel food cake, y'all? It's white, right?
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Devil's food cake is what?
Black.
Brown, black, dark. So do you see how even in just stuff, simple things like that, how we are constantly told that's a microaggression. That's all the time something is not right for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not right. So we constantly, but we have to learn that's the tool of the enemy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the tool, it's just like the devil. The devil uses the same tools all over and over and over and over. That's what they're doing with us until we actually get it, start using it. And it's not that we are not capable, it's conditioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to happen overnight. We're still going to have generations, we're still going to be undoing this because this has been generation, 400 years of slavery, right? But what was happening before that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All
of that we have to keep on keeping it afloat.
Have things to work through, but that historical trauma, that the conditioning that we got from being assimilated into the states, that is still very prevalent, and it's still a very powerful tool. But until we band together, until we start breaking the cycles, until we start using our voice, taking back our power. And the way we do that is we show up as our authentic selves. We wear our hair natural. We sue if they fight, if they say that we can't. We do the things that we're supposed to do that make us our authentic selves. When you speak up, oh no, wait a minute. Excuse me, but I was speaking, Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking, and that was my idea. I spoke about that in this meeting, and you will give me credit for my idea. We have to be willing, just like our brothers and our counterparts before us who fought for civil rights were willing to give up their lives.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to give up something, and that may mean a job. That may mean we might not be in that house. That may mean we may not have that car. That may mean we lose that job. But we have to be willing to give up something in order to win this fight, because we're not going to win by not losing something. It's
Correct.
not going to.
Yeah, that's true. And indeed, I was going to comment on that because a lot of us are afraid of speaking up and indicating when we're not agreeing with something, because we are afraid of, like you said, losing the job or consequently losing our house and everything. But it's like you said, sometimes you need to stand up for something and yes, let them know that you have a voice as well.
Absolutely. And there are things that we can do. There are ways that you do what you need to do. Of course, you don't just come out and say, you learn how to manage those things in the most diplomatic way, but make sure your point gets across. My mother used to tell me that when I was younger, girl, you got a bad attitude. You're going to have to learn how to talk to people, because I was up and out and that was it. And I had to learn that, and we can learn that, but we also need to learn what our rights are and to start using the system Yes, there are many times that the system does not work for us, but there are a lot of times that the system does. I'm a prime example. I was discriminated against and I sued. Yes, the EEOC, they're there. That's all I can say about the EEOC over here in the
What is
state.
EOC?
It's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where
Oh, okay.
if there's anything discrimination in the workplace and things like that, you go through them and you report it, and they're supposed to help be a mediator. Like I said, they're supposed to be a mediator. I had my own attorney and everything. However, we still have to use those systems. I won, but I had my ducks in a row and I was willing to do what I needed to do. We have to start using the systems, and we need to start keep a record. Many of us are not keeping records. I always taught my kids, document, 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 because I promise you they're documenting.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
If
Every
it's not
single
in
word.
writing, it didn't happen. If you
Correct.
don't have date, time, who you spoke to, what was said, what they were wearing, whatever, it didn't happen. We have to start being very, very active and be proactive about what we're doing. We don't have to show up at work with attitudes, but we have to show up at work being confident in who we are. And that means using our voice. But you can't be confident in who you are until you know who you are.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
that is going to require managing your thoughts in your brain so that you can truly know who you are, so that when they try something that's designed to make you feel less than, to make you feel that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, you know for certain that that's their ploy. That's not truth, because you have the truth of who you are over here. I understand what you're doing. Not gonna work this time.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Yeah.
gonna work this time. But I understand you gotta try.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. It's a continuous process. Indeed, it's not
Yes,
something 1, 2, 3, but as long as we keep on working on it. So
absolutely.
I have another question. How important is one's culture when it comes to trauma and mental health?
Oh, so very important. Here's the thing. Once, and I'm gonna speak from being a Black African American over here in the States. When we were in slavery, our culture was stripped from us for the most part. We weren't allowed to do our singing. The only thing that we pretty much had was our spirituality. And even that was sometimes, taken
Yeah.
from us.
Taken
So
away. Yeah.
our culture, and I'll give you from a cultural perspective, even in most cultures, when it comes to women, we are not, of course, the dominant one. If you are in certain parts of Africa, you will see that the man is in front of the woman holding the stick. The woman is carrying the baby, the food, the everything, and is out in the doing the work field. It's just like the lion doesn't do any work. But that's the way it is. If we look at our Bible, and I am a firm believer in my faith, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christianity, of course, and the Bible. But when we read our Bible, we see that Adam, the woman was made from Adam. That is the way of the creation. Could that be considered historical trauma? I do believe that it can be. I was listening, and I was thinking, I was listening to, what was it, Leviticus or Exodus and so forth, and they were talking about how much it costs for a man and a woman and a child and so forth to for their offering and so forth. And I was listening that the women's offering was a pittance. So, there is some historical trauma, even from the biblical perspective of it. So that's something that we have to contend with, but I don't think it has to be something that we have to allow to browbeat us. We know that as women in every pretty much culture, well, a lot, I won't say every, but many, many cultures, the girl is not the prize. Although we are the birthers of the prize. So we really should be the prize, because without us, you can't have a prize. But anywho, I don't know where that came from, but that was not the way it was supposed to be. When anyone ever puts themselves above someone else, and it doesn't go without some type of, I would say, words. Hey, no, you're not over me. We are equal. Yes,
Mhm.
I am a woman and you are a man, so forth. We're going to have those contentions, and I don't think we're ever going to get rid of those things. But in various cultures, that's just the way it is. That's the cultural norm. And yes, I really do think it could be considered a historical trauma. However, it's not necessarily a cataclysmic event that has us oppressed. That's just simply is the way it is. That's the culture. Um,
Mhm.
so you could see it that way, and you could probably make a case for it, but your culture is just who you are. Those are your traditions. Those are your rituals. Those are the things that make you unique in that particular in that culture. So that's
Mhm.
your identifying marks, if you will.
Yeah. And you mentioned just now about the female being the woman being the one walking behind the men. Now, when we talking about the women and daughters, especially when it comes to the Black community, is there any difference in that relationship comparing to other races?
I absolutely believe there is. Here's the reason why. When you are dealing with generational trauma as well as this historical trauma, we don't have the Caucasian race dealing with historical trauma. They're they are the dominant race, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
They're oppressing everyone else. Why would there be there? I'm not saying that there aren't mother wounds in that in their race.
Mhm.
However, that there is a big difference when we're talking about mother wounds with Black women. Many of us grew up with mothers who were very hyper independent. How many Caucasian counterparts can we say were hyper independent? They were usually stay at home moms.
Yeah.
They were able to nurture their children in ways that our parents were not able, our mothers were not able to nurture us. Our mothers also, remember, were dealing with generational and historical trauma. So if they did not come from, did not see nurturing, if they did not see love, if they not, and not that they weren't loved, they loved them, but showing love, the emotional presence of love, they can't, many of them cannot give it to you. So we walk around, and that's where I say the holes. Many of us have holes because some of our mothers have never said I love you, can't say it.
Mhm. Correct.
Some of our
Mhm.
fathers have never said it, can't say it. Some of us don't know who our
Yeah.
fathers are. Even if
Mhm.
they stayed in the house with us, we don't know who they are because they didn't talk to us. They were
Yeah.
just our fathers.
Mhm.
So there's so many things that are very different about the way we were raised by our mothers versus how a Caucasian girl was raised by her mother. She probably went to debutante. We were trying to keep food on the table.
Yeah.
Our mother was going hungry, trying to make sure that we had something to eat. A lot of times our mother was working 3 and 4 jobs, cleaning over at somebody else's house to make sure that we had. So she didn't have the time a lot of time, and it wasn't that she didn't want to. Many times she didn't have the time or the energy to pour into us a lot of times the way that she would have liked to.
Yeah.
Many of us don't, and that's a hole for us. I know from me, my mother was not a nurturer. Was she a great mother? Absolutely. I ain't never have to worry about nothing. But I didn't get the emotional side of my mother. My mother was never that way. Now she's much, much better now. We have a
Mhm.
great relationship. She calls me, she sends me cards, she does all. But when I was younger, no ma'am, no ma'am, that was not my
Yeah.
mother. But she has learned. And I, on the other hand, because I didn't get that from my mother, I was determined my children were going to get that. Now, I am very much like my father. My father is the emotional one. My mother is like, they switched, that's just the way it was. But
Yeah.
I was very much like her. So I was very touchy, and I needed that. But my mother couldn't give that to me. It wasn't part of who she was. So if we don't understand, and then here's the other side of that. As I grew up and I had my own kids and I started looking, I was like, wait a minute, grandma didn't even hug us. Well, if grandma didn't hug us, she didn't hug them either, right?
Yeah.
And then grandma didn't hug, who hugged grandmama? And who hugged grandmama before that? That's how you understand. And that's how you can release people from those feelings of hurt, those feelings of anger, because then you can say, you know what? She couldn't have known better.
Yeah.
She can't do something. What did Maya Angelou say? When you know better, you can do better.
Yes.
Until you can know better, you can't do any better. So she was only doing what she could. But
Yeah.
if you don't know the history, you will walk around really wounded.
Yeah.
And you can't forgive. You can't release. And that's why there's so many mother-daughter relationships that are very, very tragic in that they don't get along, they don't talk, because one is like, I took care of you, and that's love. The child does not necessarily understand that.
Yeah.
But if that's the only thing that's how she was showed love, that's how she's going to show you love. Children learn what they live, period.
Yeah, correct. And then how can we break that cycle? And even the cycle about how we think about ourselves, but also when we're talking about, for example, the mother-daughter relationship, but also son and father relationships. How will we be able to break that?
The only way, well, I won't say the only way, but the best way is to talk. I will tell you, for the longest time, I did not know that my stepfather was not my father. I kind of had an idea, and my mother said she told me, and I'm pretty sure she said, baby girl, I told you. Who did you think he was? And I knew, but having those conversations, and a lot of times we don't have the conversations enough. A lot of times we don't want to ask, the parents don't want to answer the questions because they are still reeling. They're still hurt. They're still angry. We have to start talking to our children. We have to have these honest dialogues. You ain't got to tell them how it happened and all that, but you do need to tell them some things so they can actually have a true understanding. And then the other side of that, we also have to stop disrespecting the parents. We chose that person to have those children with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to own your own mess first and foremost as well. But we have to have the conversation. And then what I also teach my clients, especially those who cannot have that conversation, like for instance, my dad is deceased. I can't have a conversation with him anymore. He can't tell me anything. So what I have to do is have conversations with people who will or are willing to have conversations with me. When I started my journey in 2009 for my healing, I literally had to ask my mom all kinds of questions because my great grandfathers were no longer here. My father was no longer here. He passed that November of 2009. And there were people that weren't there. So my mom had to give me as much as she could. And the rest I had to say, well, Lord, I'll never know the information to this. I just need to let it go. Sometimes you just got to let it go and just understand that this is part of how life happened. But that does not mean that makes you less than. You are still worthy by virtue of being human. You are still worthy. You are still enough. You have to learn how to accept the fact from the opinions and the lies sometimes. And when I say lies, I don't mean that people lied to you, but they actually did lie to you, and they tell you that you'll never be anything, that you're not going to amount to anything, that you're ugly, or that you're not smart, or that you're this, that, and the other. That's an opinion. Yes, it does hurt when it's coming from the people that are caretakers, because that's what our caretakers is, where we actually form those attachments, whether we're going to have a secure attachment, whether we're going to have a disorganized attachment where we're just all over the place. And when I say disorganized, I don't mean that you are disorganized in your home, but disorganized because you don't know how to handle your own emotions. because you were never secure. You didn't know if you were going to be fed. You didn't know if you were going to be hungry. You didn't know if you were going to have a roof over your head. You didn't know if somebody was going to acknowledge that you were crying as a baby. All of these things have something to do and follow you throughout life. And they are the things that are going to actually create your personality, how you communicate, how you connect with other people. That's why it's so important to actually have those conversations so that you can understand, why am I this way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I lost my marriage because I did not know who I was. Now, it was probably for the best because we had grown apart and I was trying to find my father in my husband. How many of us are doing that?
That's
Because
now
there was
the
a hole that couldn't be filled, right? So I'm putting all this pressure on a man that's supposed to be my friend, my supporter, my lover, not my father. No one could ever be my father except my father. And a lot of us are putting that pressure on them because that's a hole that we're trying to fill. And once we understand that that hole can never be filled by a man or a friend or an addiction, and we can learn to heal that inner child who needed that presence, who needed that provision, who needed that protection, that praise, the 4 P's, we have to start learning how to give it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's how we start breaking the cycles down. But I also encourage people to also ask for help. This is not easy to do by yourself. I did it by myself. It was hard. It took me 5.5, 6 years, and I'm still healing. We will be healing until the day that we die. Okay. Yeah. But the healing can go much, much faster. You can have much more clarity and confidence and self-esteem and reclaim your worth, because you didn't lose it. You just gave it away. Reclaiming our worth if we work with a therapist, if we work with a coach, or if we work with a combination of both of those. But we have to start.
Yeah.
And that's the part, start.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a comment that's saying your needs were not met when you were young, and that's what a trigger is now.
Yes, absolutely. And let me explain, a trigger could be anything. If your needs weren't met, let's say, for instance, you didn't get the emotional support that you needed, or you didn't get the physical, whatever it might have been, you will associate that with certain things. For instance, I'm going to speak for myself. I always needed someone to tell me that they love me, that I was pretty. I did not understand it. I was just like, why do I need this? Am I pretty? You think I'm pretty, baby? You love me? You love me? I mean, literally like the little girl on the thing. You love me? You love me? You love me? I was like, why do I do that? Well, that was for me, I had lost, by the time I was 2, my mom had to talk me through this. By the time I was 2, I had lost my grandfather, who loved me dearly, my uncle, who used to call me his own child. My dad stopped him from saying that, so he stopped picking me up and taking me places. My dad was not in the house with me. He married someone else because my grandmother intercepted the letter telling him that my mama was pregnant because he was in Vietnam, and so I didn't grow. So every man that I knew by the time I was 2, because my grandfather died. So all of them were gone. So I had no male in my life telling me that I was beautiful, which is what girls need. No one saying, I love you. No one saying you're daddy's girl. No one saying, come here, princess. No one doing any of those things. So when I started putting two and two together, doing my healing work, I was like, oh my God, this is why I am the way that I am. And then I was like, okay, now that I know this, it has nothing to do with me. Nothing that happened had anything to do with me. It was life. The choices that all of them made. My granddaddy did not choose to die. He's gone. My uncle made a choice because he really wasn't my father. So he had no business saying that he was my father. And my dad, he had no control over what happened. He ended up marrying someone else because of someone else's choice. Had nothing to do with me. Yet here I was feeling like I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't good enough. So that's the reason why my father wasn't with me. That's the reason why I needed so much um,
Affection.
words of affirmation from the men in my life to tell me that. So when you start peeling the layers back, is when you can really start to understand. So now that I have a very healthy marriage now, and my second husband was a great husband. If he's listening, thank you for always treating me well, because he did. But my current husband is a wonderful, wonderful man. He always tells me that I'm beautiful. Sometimes I still ask him because, I know I be looking good sometimes, but, but I'm so much more secure in who I am. And I'm going to give you one example also. I had a little insecurity and I did not understand why. He has an older, everybody comes with baggage, right? Everybody is
Correct.
dating somebody else, married. Well, not everybody, but most people have had
Yeah.
some relationships.
Mhm.
And I did not like that at all, because my thinking was, once you're done, you're done. What I need to call and say happy birthday to you for? What do you need to call and tell me happy birthday? I mean, that's nice and everything, but I
Yeah.
have someone to give that to me now, right? That's how I was
Mhm.
thinking. And me, because I am a woman, we also know how women think, men know how men think. And so certain things were happening, and he wasn't doing it. He was just the nice person that he is. He's going to help you. If he is not going to hold a grudge. If more than likely, he's just not going to do that anymore. He used to be real good at it. But I had to, why is that really bothering me? Because it's easy for us to say, I don't want you talking to that person. But you need to really say, wait a minute, step back. It's really not about them. What's really going on? And when you can have those frank, honest conversations with yourself and really be honest and transparent with yourself, is when you get your breakthroughs. And that's when you can actually start to truly enjoy life, because now you're not putting all these expectations and you're not holding people to these standards that they're
Right.
not even possible.
Yeah.
And because anytime you have an expectation, you're setting yourself up for hurt. Because 9 times out of 10, we haven't even shared with the person what we expect of them.
Yeah.
They're just supposed to know it. So if they don't give it to us, we're mad. Well, how in the world was I supposed to know you wanted me to put the bread on the red box instead of the green box? I mean, you didn't tell me. I mean, why are you mad? I couldn't read mine.
Yeah.
But the work is the work, and you have to do the work if you want the work to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, but sometimes we're afraid as well to do the work because we know all the emotions and negative feelings that come in with it, and we might not be ready for it.
Absolutely. And it's okay. Here's what, if you're not ready for it, still start. It's not to say that you got to get it all done right away. It's a process. Some parts of the healing journey are going to take longer than others, but you still have done some work. And so you can still take those tools and still continue to grow. And as you continue to grow, you will be able to move a little bit closer and a little bit further into that area that hurts way too much. And you'll peel a little bit back at a time, and you'll peel a little bit more back, and you'll peel a little bit more back. And before you know it, it may seem like years, but even if it takes years, continue to do the work.
Yeah.
Because we know the wounds are deep. We know the wounds hurt. I'm still doing work. I was crying the other day, but it's okay. The key is allowing yourself. And as Black women, we were never given the permission or and I'm going to call it the luxury, because we have always been the strong. That's what they wanted us. Because remember, if you were in the field, it didn't matter. You were going to do the same work that the man did. And because of that, that's the reason why they believe we were the strong Black woman. We can take so much. And because of that, we are the glue in our communities. And people really believe that we just don't have feelings. We have feelings. And we've actually desensitized ourselves because we don't want to appear weak. Well, that's not appearing weak. That's being human. We're not human doings. We are actually human beings. And when we can start being human and actually allowing our feelings and feeling our feelings and sitting in those feelings, I don't mean just sitting in your feelings like that, but I mean sitting in the and allowing yourself to feel hurt, allowing yourself to feel sad, allowing yourself to feel. We do angry good. The problem with angry is that we go from angry to getting ready to cut somebody too thin to fry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be me sometimes, not all the time. And that part, that angry Black woman, we've been labeled that, but we're not angry. We're focused. And even if I am angry, why can't I be angry? You can be angry, right? I have every reason to be angry. I got historical trauma. I got generational trauma. I come to work, I got trauma. I go to the grocery store, there's a microaggression. I can go over to get my nails done, and there's a microaggression over there. I can't go into the bar to get something. Everywhere I go, there is some type of microaggression, some type of bias, something at me because of the color of my skin. So I have a right to be angry. Don't tell me that I cannot be angry. Own your anger. It's yours.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice thing. Own your anger. It's yours. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everybody else gets to be mad but us. And we're the ones who are being hurt. We are the most disrespected, uncared for, unprotected group in this country, in the world. Black women.
Yeah.
I have a right to be angry. Yes. So if it bothers you, go be uncomfortable over there, but I'm going to be angry over here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Correct. I know that there are generational and societal trauma therapists, but what tools are there for us to be able to work on those traumas?
The first thing I always, and I am a huge, huge, huge proponent of this, journaling. You don't have to know what to say. Just start writing. Write about your day. Write about your feelings. Write about what you ate, whatever. Write. Because here's what happened. When you start journaling and you start writing about your feelings, the ones that you are now allowing yourself to feel, you'll start connecting those thoughts. What was I doing? What was I thinking? And there's so many things that you can journal prompts. If you looking for a journal prompt, type Google journal prompts for anger, journal prompts for trauma, journal prompts for self-awareness, whatever, journal prompts for gratitude. There's a slew of journal prompts out there for you to get started on that process. But the first thing is definitely journaling. The second thing I would say, and I love affirmations and declarations, and I say the two. Affirmations and declarations are really important. Affirmations only if you believe this about yourself, that is possible for yourself. If you don't believe that it's possible for yourself, call it a declaration. I am going to declare this over my life because you want to bring it in. Affirmations is something that you already believe is possible, but make it realistic. I am going to one day be a millionaire, but right now I got to get to 6 figures. Well, some of us may need to get to 5 figures. Some of us need to get to, 4 figures. But be realistic in what you believe in about yourself, because that's not realistic. If I have 0 cents in the bank and I'm saying I'm a millionaire, that's not realistic. I need to be a dollar owner right now, because I don't even have a penny. I have $1. I have $1. I have $100, and build from that. The other thing is definitely talk. If there is anyone that you can talk to who you can trust, and that is something that is very, very important, make sure that it's someone that you can trust with your deepest secrets and your deepest and darkest thoughts, because not everyone can handle that, and not everyone has your best interest at heart. And that's why I always say therapy and coaching. If that's something that's your budget, or if you have insurance, therapy will be paid for with insurance. Yeah. Coaching, no, ma'am. That is a financial investment in yourself that you will have to find ways to make that investment. But if you can do it, definitely invest in that. But if you have no other tools, you can start doing that. And there are many, many coaches that offer free master classes. There are free challenges all the time. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, someone is doing something. So there are opportunities for you to get resources, even if you do not actually work with someone one-on-one or even do a group coaching program. I'm a big proponent of meditation. Um,
Yeah.
Meditation is very important. And I want to say this about meditation because when I first started meditating, it was really hard for me because I thought I had to shut my mind off and stop the thoughts. That's not what meditation is about. Meditation is simply calming and allowing the thoughts to come in and go right back out, not sitting on the thought. So if I have a thought while I'm meditating, I just let it fly right on past me and just still stay in that stance where I am mindful about what's going on around me, but not holding on to the thought and actually getting stuck on that thought and moving. It's just like we're praying. You
Yeah.
want to pray. You know, the devil will send something in your way all the time. And you want to pray. He'll find something. You know what? You got to go cook that food. They can wait. I'm having my time. That's kind of how you have to do with meditation, but it is very, 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 very powerful because it centers you, it grounds you, and it gives you that time to actually just be present.
Yeah.
Breath work, I am huge, love breath work. Breath work, he breathed life into us. Nostrils. That is our lifeline. When you can connect to your breath, you have a lot more control than you think you do. Because when you have to focus on your breathing, you can't focus on being angry.
Yeah.
Focus on being angry. But there are so many resources. YouTube. Many, many, many. I have a YouTube channel. But again, there's so many resources out there. But if you can do nothing else, start writing. Start writing.
Yeah. Correct. Those are indeed very helpful tips and tools, actually. Yes, that we need to start incorporating more often too, because those are things that even though they have been existing for a very long time already, but we mentioning it. It's coming more and more now that people making use of it, talking about it, and the community still needs to kind of like get accustomed with, for example, the meditation, or doing a breathing exercise. Because, like, for example, the meditation, why do I need to go meditate? Why do I need to go and close my eyes and focus on myself? It's not something that
Right.
everybody understanding yet what for benefits it has.
Exactly. And if you're a Christian, like myself, the Bible tells us to meditate on his word. So if we're meditating on his word, why would we not meditate on what's going on with us? Because he also tells us that we need to take every thought captive. So if we are willy-nilly and just letting every thought just go through our mind, that's the reason why we need to meditate. Because if you don't know what your thoughts are, you're not taking your thoughts captive. You'll just start, you have to just be here, there, everywhere, and you'll just be just out of time, out of energy, everything. That's why meditation is so good. And I think the reason why many people don't understand meditation, because they're thinking of it from the Eastern way of meditation, which is very deeply rooted in, I think, Hindu and Buddhism and so forth and so forth. That's not the type of meditation we're talking about. I meditate to prayer. I love a YouTube channel called Grace with Purpose. They have some beautiful prayers, and you can just sit and meditate on the word with the and that is right there. Is in and of itself. You're killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
So you're getting your spiritual food as well as you're meditating. So you can certainly do that. But meditation, because I was one of those people who's like, okay, I'm not Hindu. That's not my thing. I was like that about yoga also, but there are some Christian yoga teachers out there, and yoga is very good for mindfulness. That's another great practice. Just be careful. Do your homework, do your research. There are so many resources out there. And with affirmations, I want to say this because I think a lot of people also get lost with affirmations. Affirmations are not about the toxic positivity. I'm not a believer in the toxic positivity. I'm not in all that light and love. Yes, I believe in light and love because I'm supposed to be the salt of the earth. I'm supposed to let my light shine, right? So I'm supposed to do that. And I want to love because God is love. However, I do not believe that we're supposed to just, it's going to be all right. It could be worse. No, let's stop doing that. Let's stop doing that, because what we're telling people is to suppress their emotions. What we're telling people is that what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they've gone through is not valid. And that is not true. So I'm not about the toxic positivity. And that's why when I say with affirmations, yes, I do. I have them all over my office, because I need to make sure that I'm speaking life into myself. We have power of life and death in our tongue. The words that we speak come back to us in some capacity. Maybe not today, but maybe next week or next month. So we have to be speaking over ourselves. We have to be speaking life into ourselves. We have to speak, because God said he wants us to have life more abundant. And he said what you asked for, he would give it to you if it was in his will. So you got to speak it. If you think about Genesis, he spoke everything into existence. That tells us something, right? We have to speak these things over ourselves, but don't do the toxic positivity. When someone is going through something, instead of saying it could be worse, say, how can I help? If you just need me to be here to just listen, or just be quiet, or just be here with you, I'll be willing to do it. But please don't tell people, give them this toxic positivity. We need to be able to experience, to feel, and to actually be in our emotions. Even God was in his emotions. He struck the Israelites down like, I'm just saying, he gave us these emotions for a reason. They're what keep us safe a lot of times. Those are the things that allow us to, what make us human. Cats, I don't know if cats have feelings, but fish, I mean, I don't know what kind of feelings they have, but that's what separates us from other beings on this earth, right?
Yeah. And we also some comments. Yes, we are not angry, we are focused. Love it. Own your anger, it's yours. And when you were talking about the different tools, someone mentioned as well the evening drawing, and like you said, mindfulness.
Yes. Art
And
is great.
and they agree with you, no toxic positivity.
Exactly.
Well, actually continue talking the whole night about this topic. It's so interesting, and every time another question pops up. So I think we might need to do a second
I would love to.
session. But for now, we reach at the end of this session. Is there anything you would like to say as a closing?
I would just like to say thank you so much for having me. And I hope that something that I said actually impacts someone to make that necessary change for themselves. You know, tomorrow's not promised to us. We all know that, right? But if we do everything that we can to live the best life that we can now, it may not be what we want it to be today, but if God gives us grace and puts our name on the arise list for another 20, 30, 40 years, Lord have mercy, how much could our life change? How much could you impact this world with your gifts, your purpose? How many cycles in your family could you break?
Yeah.
You have the power. We are the power. We are that black girl magic. That ain't no joke. We can do this. If we can do what we did over here in these states and turn a whole election around, and we do it all the time.
Yeah.
We are magic. That's the reason why everybody's so afraid of us, because when they realize we understand our own power and our own magic, and we start doing this work and peeling these layers back, they ought to be afraid.
Yeah.
Becoming powerful. Afraid that we're going to do something to them, but you be afraid, because you know what? We have been you guys had us brainwashed for a little bit, if you will, that we weren't. And we are from royalty. We are queens. Let's straighten up these crowns.
Exactly.
If you need some help and would love to work with me, I would love to support you. I do have one-on-one client spots available, and I will be opening up my group coaching program, which is called Becoming Me, in May. I would love to have you a part of that. So I guess I can put it here in the chat. Or should I put in the comments? I will definitely. Oh, I didn't even have a comment. I couldn't see anything. It's a good thing because I'd have been like this. I would love the opportunity to support you on your journey. It would be considered a honor to hold space for you. So please do feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to schedule some time to talk with me. Tracy Forde, Forde is you can become a friend and we can go from there. But I'll also make sure I don't see where I can actually type in the comments, but
I
I will
will,
make sure it's in the comments once we get off the live.
and I will put it as well so people indeed can get it. So yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for
Thank
your
you.
time and your willingness to talk about this topic. And of course, we would like to thank all the viewers that were also present
Yes.
with their comments and their questions. And we really enjoy this time, and we really got some information, and some of them were some eye opener. So we really appreciate you talking with us about this topic. So, well, mindful elevation, like, we all about mindful, we all about informing the community, bringing different topics, bringing different discussion, like we did tonight as well. And we really want to thank all of you for being present with us. And one thing I want to give you all, as you focus on clearing your generational trauma, do not forget to also claim your generational strength. Your
Yes.
ancestors gave you more than just wounds. So let me
Absolutely.
remember that as well.
Yes, they gave us this beautiful spirit. They gave us so much culture. You think about the medicines, the spiritual songs. They gave us patience. They gave us our
Yeah.
work ethic. They gave us this beautiful melanin. They gave us so much. And a lot of times we do overlook that because we forget, because we hear so much about it, the resiliency.
Yeah.
Oh my God, just so many beautiful things. And I thank my ancestors, and I pray that they are proud of us.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, how we working, and how we getting one step ahead. Yes, they are. Yeah, definitely proud that we putting in the work, and doing our best.
Yes. Well, thank you again. I truly enjoyed myself.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody, and then we will see you next Saturday again.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye
You
bye.
too.